right. So on this episode of your podcast that we're doing, we were kind of talking before we got recording. I know, and I'm one of them, you have a lot of people that probably come up to you and say, Blake, how do I get started in this? I want to invest. I have zero knowledge in the real estate world or investing in any real form, or maybe I've got some money sitting in my savings account I want to do something with. I'm sure you get asked that question a lot.
Yeah.
What advice would you offer, I guess?
Yeah, well, I'm very simple-minded, right? I try to break it down. Anytime I'm learning a new concept, I'm like, tell it to me like I'm 5, right? Like, make sure I understand it. So,
Right.
so let's try to break it down that way. So let's have 3 steps of, hey, I want to invest in real estate. What are the 3 steps that I need to take to see if it's right for me? Right?
Do you have a lot of people that maybe think they want to invest in real estate, or maybe it's like a kind of a fad almost? I don't know if that's the right term to use, but you know
Yeah.
that maybe investing in real estate is maybe not the best thing for everyone.
I definitely don't think it's perfect for everybody, or every aspect or avenue of real estate investing is not perfect for everybody. And what I mean by that is there are so many different ways to invest in real estate that flipping houses is not perfect for everybody, right?
But that's all you see on HGTV.
Yeah,
and
right.
all that
That's
stuff.
that's the
Yeah.
cool thing. Well, and I'm kind of in the real estate bubble or world, and probably a little biased in a sense. So I'm gonna kind of flip it back on you. Not being in the real estate world yourself, does it seem like it's like crypto or Bitcoin? It's like the cool thing to do. Like, do you hear that or get that impression, or is it kind of ignored and you don't really hear about it?
I would say it is definitely just with the Chip and Joanna Gaines people out there that just follow that show and think, man, I could buy a property and flip it pretty easy, and maybe I've built some cabinets, or I've done a little bit of handiwork. How hard can it be?
Yeah.
So it's definitely to me it seems like a fad thing. Maybe not as much now as it was. I don't know when that show was popular, but I guess in my mind, I see people that say, "Oh, I own property, in rental properties in particular," and just that secondary income that you get. I guess that's what's attractive to me. But at the same time, I don't really know. I've also heard horror stories, about like being a quote unquote landlord and just how hard that can be. So yeah, coming from somebody who has no idea about the ins and outs of what it truly means to own and manage property. It seems like a cool thing to do. It seems like an easy way to have a passive income. And I definitely would think that other people my age would probably think that way too.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Okay, that's good to hear, because like I said, I'm encapsulated inside that real estate world. So to me, social media, all my algorithms, it's all geared around, all I get fed is real estate stuff. So I'm curious, is do other people get fed that same
Probably not
input?
to the level that you do.
Yeah.
But I think, I'm sure there's a lot of people my age, my brother. I mean, we've always thought, man, it'd be so cool to like own, different properties and either rent them out, or I don't know if I would be as drawn to the flipping aspect. But the long hold to me is more attractive.
Yeah.
And just kind of, I don't know. I hope that answers your question to some degree.
It does, and I think we're going to dive into maybe for you and your brother a little bit more specifically. I'm going to gear these 3 steps toward y'all, because you've expressed interest in, let's dive into more information and gather all the information available to decide, is this for us? And then if it is, what aspect of real estate is for us? Like you said, maybe flipping's not as sexy to you as buy and hold. Inside buy and hold, what type? Is it industrial, residential, retail, commercial? Is it short-term, long-term? So there's all different kind of pieces that we'll get into eventually. But so we're going to get into those 3 steps. Right before we do, I want to add, and this is this is applicable to me as well, being influenced by social media so much and surrounded in that real estate input on social media. Most of what you see and hear is all positive and easy.
Yeah,
It's
you're always
mailbox
hearing the
money.
good stories,
Right.
and like, man, I bought this property for 10 grand and sold it for 150 or whatever.
Yeah.
Something crazy.
So what and one of the things I want to try to communicate through this podcast is, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, there are, I'm learning every single deal I do, every single day, and interaction that I have, I'm learning something new, and nothing that I execute is perfect, right? But as long as I'm taking that information and trying to become better or improve the systems that I've got, I think that's where the lesson, or kind of, for me, that's where the lesson lies, is how I interpret that feedback or that negative experience. And so what I want to put out through this channel is, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? Like, I want to share some of those failures and different things that I've gone through, because it's not, okay, I bought a rental property, now I'm going to go sit on the beach and I just get a monthly check and don't have to do anything.
Yeah, dude,
right?
that's what I want.
Because I think that's a perception.
Yeah,
I think,
definitely.
you flip a house, we've talked about this a little bit, but throw my contractor on it. He never calls me. Everything, all the decisions are made. Kind of like I did that. We talked about last time. Call me when you're done, kind of concept. That's as close to that as I've gotten, and I was still over there a good bit and making decisions. We had some hiccups. We had some stuff we had to fight through. So that perception of it's perfect, you just blow out a wall and it's easy, lay the hardwood. Someone's going to give you an extra $100,000 because you made it pretty. Or I'm going to go sit on the beach and just collect money because I bought one rental property. So it's not all beautiful and perfect like that. And I think social media gives that perception a lot, and different podcasts do as well. So I really want to dive in and make sure that that's communicated, and not just,
sure,
oh, Blake has no problems in his investing world. Because
Yeah.
that's not the case.
Well, I've told you before on other episodes we've talked about, my grandfather had some rental properties, and he got into that and was encouraging me to get into it. Now, this was before the big housing bubble recession that happened around the early 2000s. And after that, it was pretty hard, And then I also kind of firsthand heard some of the horror stories and stuff that, he had to deal with, bad tenants and stuff like that. And I know we've talked about that, so I don't want to go too much into that aspect, but I've definitely had my reservations about pulling the trigger and really getting started. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have the same hesitations, like, I want to invest, I want to do something, I want to be smart about it, but I don't know where to get started, I don't know what to do. And maybe they just never really do it. And I think that's kind of where I'm at, if I'm being completely honest. I'm just nervous about really going full steam into something that I really don't know a whole lot about.
Yeah. And the unknown. I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I think a lot of people are in that position of, I don't know what to do to get started. So let's talk about what those 3 steps are. So the first one is just kind of step back and figure out why. Find your why. Why are you investing? Why do you want to get? Is it because HGTV told you it's cool, social media told you it's cool, so that's it? Or
that scenario you were talking about, sitting on the beach collecting a paycheck, that's very appealing to me. That's very attractive. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about figure out your why. Number 2 is going to be decide the type of investing you want to do. So kind of like I said, the flip, the mailbox money, the commercial. Like what direction, what avenue inside investing do you want to do? And then number 3 is going to be self-assess, right? So figure out what is your unique ability, right? What relationships do you have? What financial position do you have? What do you have? What skill set, swinging the hammer, what skill set and unique ability do you have that sets you apart from everybody else, and you and your brother? What can y'all put together to where you can leverage that skill set and unique ability to improve your position as an investor, right? So those are the 3 we're going to look at. So number 1, figure out your why. So the initial is, hey, I don't want to have to work for money. I don't want to trade my time for money, is what I'm hearing from you.
That is probably my biggest thing that attracts me to real estate. My very naive understanding of real estate is that, I could just own several properties, collect a rent check every month, and now it allows me free time to not have to necessarily work a 9 to 5.
Yeah, which can be true.
Which can be true. I'm sure it's not as easy as it sounds, but I would think a lot of people, at least that I've spoken with, and me and my brother, that's probably the thing that appeals to us the most. It's just the freedom that maybe owning properties, rental properties in particular, can offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
sure. So I'm going to dissect that a little bit and
all
put
right.
you on the spot some. But so let's look at, all right, what else, if we've got some money that we can put into an investment, what else besides real estate can we invest in that gives us that same output?
Yeah.
Right? And you don't have to. We don't have to figure
no,
out.
I mean,
what all those answers are,
I mean, all the basic tropes. Invest in the stock market, invest in startup companies. The whole. There's a lot of things that you can invest in, not necessarily real estate. But to me, I guess it was just maybe part of the cool factor of just oh man, I own this awesome property down by the lake, and I own this awesome place in downtown Birmingham, and just maybe in the future, once you have leased it long enough or rented it long enough and maybe get the note paid off, and then now it's yours entirely, and maybe in the future one day you don't want to, rent it out anymore. I could move into it. I could put a family member in it. I could do whatever. So maybe that, in a sense, it's like what is more appealing than maybe just, investing in other areas where you can.
And you and your brother aren't coming in completely blind. You said your grandfather was in it, so you've got some exposure to that world.
Mostly negative,
good.
But yes.
Good and bad. But you're not brand new. I guess you've been shown a little bit in there and the
Tiny
negatives,
bit, yes.
right? So I think in looking at finding your why, I think that's a good start, right? So figuring out let's go kind of a deeper level. So I saw it on social media, be cool, passive income. Okay, why is passive income cool? Oh, I don't have to trade my time for money. Okay, well, why do you want to do that? Well, with that extra time, I want to spend it with my wife. Well, why? What are y'all going to do? Well, we've always wanted to go to Italy and travel the world and do this, and if I had passive income, I could be. So you can really continue to be like a 3-year-old. Ask why over and over and over, and really dive into the core, because there's an emotional reason and a non-business, non-financial reason, maybe it's financial, but at the heart of that, get to the heart of it, and then work your way up to say, okay, well, if the goal is to travel the world with my wife and not have to worry about money, then is real estate the best avenue to do that? And is rental property, specifically residential rental property, the best avenue to get me there? And so I really think that's the start of it. And then because like a lot of people say, oh, I see HGTV, I see social media, I see all these avenues. It looks easy. I'm in, and that's as far as the thought has gone. And so that's why I encourage people to really look in. And a lot of people, like you said, I have 3 to 5 people a week reach out. Hey, I see you're in real estate. I want to invest. And so I'll give them these 3 things, and they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, hey,
I got a perfect opportunity. Here we go.
Here's the deal. You don't have to have any money. You'll make $100,000 on it. And you'll have it next week, right? That's what they want to hear. But honestly, what I tell them is, because they're coming to me as a realtor and an investor, and they say, find me, as a realtor, find me that deal. And I tell them, I said, look, first, that deal doesn't exist. And if it does, I'm probably going to buy it.
Yeah.
Right? And so I really get people to try to dive into, why do you want to invest in real estate? So that's the first piece. All right, so let's jump out. Anything else you want to expand on?
No,
kind of
I
dig
think,
into that why?
I think I've shown how much I really know.
Well, and no, that wasn't to call you out, but that was to, for you and your brother, before we come on maybe next time, y'all dive in together on, okay, well, let's really workshop that idea and dive into why do we want to do this. Because I think it's going to be fun to follow y'all's journey of gathering information and then eventually deciding on here, is this a path we want to go down? And then if so, then we're going to start growing your portfolio together. It's going to be fun.
Awesome.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So,
well, I would like to expand on that. One thing you mentioned earlier, speaking specifically to my grandfather, it was residential, kind of in low-income areas. And he had some good residents that stayed in his place, and he had some that were pretty tough to deal with. After he passed, those properties kind of got dumped on my parents, and we had a tough time getting a couple of those renters out of the house just so we could sell it and just kind of be done with it.
Yeah.
Not wanting to deal with it anymore. So I guess a question I have, you mentioned earlier residential versus commercial real estate. Do you have a preference when it comes to that world? And maybe that's something you could look more into, or something we could look more into, is maybe like buying a place that doesn't necessarily, it's not someone that's living there, but maybe a business or something like that.
Yeah. And that leads us perfectly into number 2. So pick the type of investing you want to do. And that's inside asset class, meaning commercial, residential, and then inside that class, where I guess a class inside of a class, I need another term for that, but you said it was kind of lower income, that residential that he had. So that would be, it's like A, B, C, D kind of ranking, A being super nice, very expensive, D being probably where he was.
Yeah, the Mountain Brooks versus the,
right. And for those, and really for all classes, I kind of separated into, on one end, you can focus on cash flow. On the other end, you can focus on appreciation. And so if you're going to focus on cash flow, you're not really going to count on appreciation. And so, for example, your grandfather, it sounds like investing in those areas, he knew that 15, 20 years later, those houses aren't going to be worth much more than what he paid for them. It's just the area is just not going to grow. It's not great. But because of that, he paid probably very little or could pick it up pretty cheap and make great cash flow, right? So in C and D areas, just in Birmingham here, I can go pay $50,000 for a house and make $900 to $1,000 a month. That cash flow would be great, right? That's like
Sounds
almost
awesome.
a 2% rule. So that usually in a very high level when a deal's brought to me, I look at the 1% rule, which is, again, not an end-all be-all, but just kind of my first look is the purchase price, or is the monthly gross income, $1,000 a month, is that at least 1% of the purchase price? And so in that case, 1%, that would be $100,000. And so to me, if I could pick up that house for $50,000 and my goal is cash flow, that's hits the 2% rule. That's like really, really good. But you're going to find that in your kind of cash flow heavy focused areas. Now go on the other end of the spectrum and going to appreciation focus, that's going to be Mount Brook, Vestavia, Homewood, kind of your higher end, very expensive. Cash flow is not going to be real sexy, right? But the goal, and this is, we've talked a little bit about, we bought that house in Homewood for my daughter's college fund. Cash flow actually is sexy just because we structured it kind of uniquely where we could have good cash flow, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was break even, like don't lose money per month and have it pay itself off in 15 years, right? And so in that 15 years, the note is paid down, it's paid off in full, so we own it free and clear, and also it's in Homewood, so it's going to appreciate during those 15 years, and it should be worth a good bit more than what we paid for it a couple years ago. And so those are kind of your two ends of the spectrum, and you give up appreciation, you're focused on cash flow, and the more you move down that spectrum on focusing on appreciation, you give up cash flow. So you land, like, where on that spectrum do you want to be? Mm-hmm. Right? And so your grandfather decided, I'm not worried about value long term, or to an extent, I'm worried about cash flow. I want and need cash today to replace income.
Right.
Which, and as I say this, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just whatever fits your goals and your why. That's where you start there and figure that out first, and then decide where do you want to invest. So, so that was a long answer to, I don't even think a real answer to your question.
No, that was good. Yeah, good explanation as to the what type of investing.
And it really comes down to the class, because that applies commercial, retail, industrial, any of those that you invest in. That's going to apply to an extent of, are you A, B, C, or D class? Mm-hmm. Right, because the worse area that you're in, the cheaper the property is going to be, and the better your cash should be, the better your cash flow should be. So, and then vice versa. The nicer area you're in, the worse your cash flow, more times than not, will be. But long term, it's a good play. Yeah.
So I guess you're probably pretty diversified in your portfolio as far as like what you have. You mentioned the one, I think we mentioned that on a previous episode. I thought it was a pretty cool idea, having that house that eventually you'll give to your daughter. Yeah. But then also having those properties, I think we've talked at one point about Section 8 homes and stuff like that you own, and having cash flow, and but still being able to navigate that world of like, this may be a C or D class area, but still, seeing the red flags and stuff that you would avoid some of the potential problems that come with that. Mm-hmm. And so that would be interesting to kind of to hear about, maybe not necessarily right this second, but at some point, some of the red flags to look for and stuff like that. And I'm sure a lot of people that come to you have not thought about this at all. They just, like you said, they just want to show me the deal. So.
Right. Yeah, and they want to kind of skip to the end without they want a shortcut, right? And there are ways and avenues and systems to buy and funds to buy into that you can skip that shortcut. When you do that, you're skipping the knowledge that you would learn going through it, which I think is extremely important for any investor to have. For the most part, if you want to just treat it like a fund, if you just want to treat it like a savings bond, just throw your money at, call me when my returns are in, there are ways to kind of skip that. You don't really need the knowledge. But if
just give her money to you, man. Just let me know when it's done.
Yeah, maybe we'll start a fund one day. But if you're going to be an active investor, and active meaning you're not outsourcing every component meaning your hand is somewhat on that portfolio, if maybe not a daily, but a weekly, definitely monthly basis, then you need to have a base of knowledge. And I don't think you need to skip that. So I'm not an accountant. I'm not an attorney. So this is not legal advice or, tax law advice or anything like that. But
Everyone out there listening, yeah.
right, yeah. But it's important. Like, that's one of the biggest things that I learned, luckily not the hard way, but like if you don't pull permits on a flip, right? Technically, Alabama law it's caveat emptorum. It's a buyer beware state. Like, you buy a house, you get an inspection, and if you miss something, it's on you. Well, if you don't pull permits on that house as a flipper and something goes wrong, the house burns down and like the family dies in it, like, you can get sued and that's on you. Right. And so, like, little things like that.
Pull permits.
Right. Yeah.
Full take home point.
Permit, yeah. But understanding that, and that's something like people, I'm not going to pull a permit because I don't have to wait on the city, or they're going to require me to rewire the house, and that's an extra 10 grand and it blows my budget. Right. Well, literally ruin your life. So knowing, that's just one of thousands of
You're not speaking from experience, hopefully.
No, oh my gosh, no, luckily. But there was a time early on I didn't know that, and I would try to get around not pulling permits. Mm-hmm. And then I went through, got my builder's license, kind of did the whole thing, and now I do it correctly, which is why I don't do as many, because it's harder to make deals work when you do it right. Because
Sure.
you got to spend more money.
Yeah.
So they're fewer and farther between, but I know I can go to bed comfortably at night knowing that
You're not going to barbecue the family that
right.
just moved in.
Yeah. So again, that's one of thousands of things that people need to know before they say, find me a deal, I'm flipping it, let's go. It's like, well, hold on. Let's dive in.
You mentioned earlier about self-assessing. I know you get a lot of people. Do you really get 3 to 5 every week? People.
In different seasons, yeah. Yeah, it's not like yearly average, probably not. But yeah, there are times that
you get a lot of people that other real estate agents or friends of yours or family, and just everybody's like, oh, Blake knows how to make money. Let's call him. That's kind of what. Well, I didn't. To be fair, I thought you were just like your average run-of-the-mill real estate agent when I first met you, whenever that was, and I was just wanting to pick your brain. And then I learned so much about all the things that you have going on, which is really cool.
And here we are.
And here we are. Yeah.
Yeah. So number 3, self-assess. All right. So let's talk about that. So your unique ability. So you've gone through your why. Why are you getting in to investing? Why are you interested? Figure out your asset class. And then kind of a part of that is picking that asset class around your unique ability. And so you're self-assessing. What am I good at? What do I enjoy? Not necessarily what am I good at, what am I enjoy doing? Like, let's pretend I was good at Excel and numbers. I'm not really, but let's pretend I'm good at it. I don't enjoy doing that stuff. So I'm not going to apply those two things into my unique ability, because I'm going to get burnt out week 1 because I just don't like doing it. So eventually I'm just going to probably stop doing it. So figure out what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. Make sure those two pair up together. And then in the asset class and the investing avenue that you pick, how can you apply that and be most attractive and competitive to that industry?
What would you say that when you first got started in all this, I think you mentioned swinging a hammer, kind of flipping it back on you. What do you think that your competitive edge was when you got started in this whole shebang?
Time.
Yeah.
So you can really break it down, time or money, right?
Okay.
What do you have more of? And a lot of people's answer is neither. Right?
Yeah, that's probably my answer. I had neither time nor money.
Right, which is tough. So, okay, what else do you have? What, you've got, what kind of skill set do you have that you can apply that doesn't take a lot of your time and doesn't require a lot of your money? And that's where you kind of start brainstorming, and then how can you apply that? So for me, right when I got started, we've talked about this a little bit, that first flip house in Irondale that I did. I wasn't married yet, fresh out of school. I worked for that custom builder for about a year. So I had the construction knowledge of how to, and I was out there physically swinging hammers, like you said. So had the construction knowledge of how to construct things. Didn't have the knowledge of all the rules, like pulling permits and that kind of stuff, but I had time to do it as well. Again, my expenses were next to nothing. Living with my parents, I wasn't married yet. Rachel was in school in Georgia at that point, so I didn't even have to take her out for dates once a week, right?
So start early.
Right, yeah. So expenses were low.
Wanting to get out there. Yeah.
And so my time was, and we've talked about that deal, but it took me 11 months to flip that house doing it all myself, but I had the time to do that. And so that was my, at the time, unique ability. it's somewhat flipped now, and that's one of the biggest things that's ever changing. Your unique ability, your position today doesn't have to be your position 5-10 years from now, a year from now, right? It'll change, and that's my time has become way more valuable to me and limited than it used to be. With a family, running a real estate team, I don't have time. I can't go sit on a job site and swing a hammer, and it doesn't make sense for me to. And so really honing down on, again, that unique ability and what you have, because like you said, very few people have the time to go sit on a job site and lay tile for 11 months. So that was my unique ability at that time, was time.
So yeah, that is a good point about doing the self-assess. I would imagine there's a lot of people out there that maybe don't take these 3 steps and think that, for whatever reason that real estate is right for them. And you mentioned earlier, maybe it's not right for everybody, but I do think it's incredibly important. I mean, as far as all the different ways that you can invest your money and try to, make your money work for you, to me, real estate has always seemed like a really solid foundation to go, or direction to go into. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems like having something tangible that I can see, whether it's a property I'm flipping or something I'm working on to eventually rent out, it just seems more stable, I guess, maybe in a way. Like I said, I'm not a real estate agent, but I would imagine, investing in property or real estate, to me, it just seems a little more, I don't know if it's the right word, but safer in a way versus like investing in some startup or some random stock in some company that could fail tomorrow or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. So
yeah, well, that kind of goes to my concept, and Jocko Willink wrote a book called Extreme Ownership, and I
like Jocko.
Yeah. So have you read that book?
I've not read the book, but I've listened to his podcast a couple times, and he writes like children's books, and he does a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I'd encourage you to get that book, and anyone listening who wants to get into this world, and really this applies. I use this thought in every aspect of my life, but extreme ownership is just everything that goes right or wrong in your life, business, family, spiritual, wherever it is. It's you take responsibility for it. And so kind of going back to what you said, real estate seems kind of safer than stock. I look at it as I have control over real estate, good or bad. So if I invest in Bitcoin, my actions on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis have zero impact on whether that stock goes up or down. I think. Now, I don't know nothing about crypto.
That's fair. Yeah.
But there's nothing I can do without dumping millions and millions of dollars that I don't have into it that would probably affect that value. In real estate, again, extreme ownership, I can't control the market. I can't control cap rates. There are a lot of things I can't control, but there's a lot of things I can. You can't
control what's going on at 123 Avenue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the value, and this is kind of getting in deeper into the weeds, but residential value to an extent is derived from the market. Like the market's slowing down a little bit right now. So the house we just flipped in Irondale, we got it under contract, but it took 7 days. 8 months ago, I would have had 10 offers in the first hour, right? So I can't.
7 days, that's still not. That's a week.
And it's full price. So that's fine. But I can't control the market, but I could control what I paid for the property, how much I spent, and the quality of the renovation, how I marketed it, how many open houses I do, who do I send it to? So I've got a lot of control on how I position that asset. Yeah. Same thing for a rental. I've got a lot of control on how I fix it up, how I market it, who I let rent it, and how they're going to handle my property, the expectations, my just everything from an operational standpoint. I've got control over. On the commercial world, I don't have control over cap rates, which is kind of like a consistent value. We can talk about cap rates later on, but basically the value of that property is derived from its income. And so almost to an extent, again, taking cap rates into consideration, the value of that property is as good as the tenant that I put into it and how well they pay and how much they pay. And so I have control over that. I set the rental rates. I set who is allowed to. So I've got more control over that. And so from an extreme ownership standpoint, if something goes wrong, like this morning, I woke up to a text to my contractor was supposed to hang some shelves on Tuesday in one of my rentals. He said he did it. the tenant texted me and said, hey, the shelf fell on me last night and hit me in the head. I'm okay, but can we fix this, please?
Oh my gosh.
That's my fault.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't confirm that my guy did it at all, but I mean, he said he did, but I didn't go look at it. I didn't go make sure that it was done correctly. And I just communicated to my tenant, hey, my guy said it's done, right? That's on me. That's not, I mean, yeah, it's my contractor's fault, but that's on me for not confirming his work or having a guy that I know is going to do it correctly. So if you just look at everything and self-assess that's my responsibility and I'm the only one to blame, don't try to pass the blame on anyone else, then I think I think that can apply to that, but really anything.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I've heard of that book, and I'm familiar with him. He's the Marine guy.
Yeah, extreme.
Yeah, he's extreme. I don't know if you've seen his social media and stuff. He gets up at like 4 a.m. and
him and David Goggins on my social media are like, oh my gosh, I got to go work out.
Dude, I know. Really cool. So check him out.
Yeah. So other, so that book you mentioned, Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's so usually when people say, hey, find me a deal, let's invest in real estate, I want to start, I'll give them a set of homework. And now, including that homework is listening to this episode. But those 3 things we talked about, but also go read, if you haven't, Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's number 1. That's not going to give you the nuts and bolts on how to flip a house, but it gives you the overview from a financial standpoint of almost kind of getting into that why, right? Is that, I'm asking you, did you kind of pull that?
I think so. That book, my brother and I both read it. My brother read it in like 2 days. But it was just really eye-opening, just kind of how his overall philosophy, if that's the only thing you take away from it, is just how he views money, you know, and just kind of some of the things that we've just accepted as truth, and he kind of reassesses that and says, you know, you think your house is an asset, but really, you know, anything that's taking money out of your pocket every month is not really an asset, and just kind of his different philosophy and different ways of viewing money and viewing kind of American culture and how we view money, and it's really cool and kind of makes you think. And, it was very interesting. Yeah.
So those are kind of the 2 I like to start with, especially Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's number 1. Getting in, if you've done the homework and figured out, hey, I want to own rental property. The book on managing rental property, published by Bigger Pockets, which is that blog and podcast we've talked about before. Brandon Turner and his wife wrote that book. And to me, it's one of the best, well-written books of step-by-step. This is how you manage a rental property, all the way down to this is the form I use to a tenant walkthrough. Here's the application. Like it is, if someone is listening to this podcast and wants, okay, you've talked about very high level stuff. What's an actionable item for me to do? I decided I want to rent. Read that book and get all the documents. Buy the book new. If you buy it used, you won't get all the secondary documents and stuff. Buy it brand new. And we're not endorsed by this, so I'm not promoting it, but I am.
Thanks, Bigger Pockets. Yeah.
But I am promoting it because I use those in my rentals, and the 20 some odd that I still manage myself, I get besides the shelf falling yesterday. They're all very well run because of those systems I found in that book, and I use them. So if people have done the homework and said this is the avenue I want to go, that's the book I like to recommend. And then go into Bigger Pockets, and they've got 8 or 10 different podcasts, a money podcast, beginner podcast, the original one with thousands of episodes. And the original one is one that I've followed since 2013. And they have different topics of hard money lending, flipping, wholesaling. And so go through, and if you've picked an avenue, go find those episodes. If you haven't, start from the beginning and just listen, because that's a big education right there. And it's free.
Awesome. Well, I encourage anybody to check that out. Be sure to, share this episode with anybody who might be interested in hearing about real estate and investing and stuff. And it's been really cool talking with you, and I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm sure I'll continue to learn a lot. And thanks for coming, man. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited for you and your brother's journey, and we'll be owning Birmingham soon.
Yeah.